A year had passed since my separation from Emily, and my life had taken an entirely unforeseen direction. I had moved into a modest condominium downtown, far from the house that had once echoed with the remnants of our shared existence. My days were quieter now, filled with work, reading, and the occasional social encounter. It was a simple life, stripped of any pretense of grandeur, yet it provided the tranquility I had so desperately craved after the storm of our separation. Since the final court proceedings, Emily and I had maintained a strict silence, neither of us reaching out. The wounds from our parting were still fresh, and I had convinced myself that the distance was for the best. I doubted my ability to face her without old feelings, anger and resentment, surging back to the surface. Then one cold November evening, as I was settling in for a quiet night, a knock sounded at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I was completely taken aback when I opened it to find Emily standing there. She looked hesitant, her posture uncertain, her eyes a mixture of determination and apprehension. "James," she began softly, her voice trembling slightly. "Emily, what are you doing here?" I managed to ask, my mind racing with confusion and a guarded curiosity. "I know this is unexpected," she said, wringing her hands nervously, "but I need to talk to you. It's important." A flurry of questions flooded my thoughts. Why was she here? Was she planning to dredge up the past and reopen old wounds? Or had something serious happened? Against my better judgment, I found myself stepping aside. Allowing her into my world once again, I stepped aside and motioned for her to enter. She moved cautiously, her steps measured, and took a seat on the very edge of my sofa, her posture stiff and tense. I sat opposite her, keeping a deliberate distance. Whatever she was about to say, I wasn't sure I was ready to hear it. "It's about my father," she said at last, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your father?" I repeated, frowning. "Richard." The name alone stirred a mix of memories and emotions. Her father had always been a thorn in the side of our relationship. From the moment we met, he made it abundantly clear that he did not consider me suitable for his daughter. His constant interference had sparked countless arguments and created a rift between Emily and me, further straining our marriage. "He's very ill," she continued, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "The doctors say he doesn't have much time left, and he's been asking to see you." "To see me?" I asked, incredulous. Why would he want to see me? She hesitated, taking a deep breath before continuing. "He wants to apologize, James. He feels responsible for what happened between us." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Richard, the man who had gone to great lengths to undermine me, now wanted to make amends? I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to laugh at the sheer irony, while another part simmered with anger at the audacity of it all. "I don't know, Emily," I said after a long pause, my voice measured. "This feels complicated. I know it's a lot to ask," she said quickly, her voice pleading. "But it would mean so much to him. And to me." I scrutinized her face, searching for any hidden agenda or ulterior motive. All I saw was sincerity and vulnerability. Despite everything that had happened, despite the hurt and betrayal, a small part of me still cared about her. Seeing her so earnest and desperate stirred something deep within me. After what felt like an eternity, I nodded slowly. "All right," I said quietly. "I'll do it." 2 days later, I found myself standing outside Richard's hospital room, bracing myself for the unexpected confrontation that lay ahead. My heart pounded as Emily stood beside me, her expression unreadable. She betrayed none of her inner feelings, her usual composure intact. With a brief, almost imperceptible gesture from her, I reached out and pushed open the door. Inside, Richard sat in a chair by the window, looking frail and diminished, a shadow of the imposing figure I once knew. His skin was pale and his frame thinner than I remembered. Yet when he saw me, his face lit up with a weak but genuine smile. "James," he said, his voice hoarse but steady, conveying a sincerity that caught me off guard. "Thank you for coming." I nodded, unsure how to respond. A tangle of emotions swirled within me. For a long time, I had harbored resentment toward this man, blaming him for much of the strain in my marriage. And now, here he was, vulnerable and seeking something I hadn't expected: closure. He took a shallow breath before continuing. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about the past," he said, his gaze fixed on me. "And I realize now the extent to which I disrupted things for you and Emily. I thought I was protecting her, but all I did was hurt both of you." His words hit me like a wave, stirring an unexpected ache in my chest. Hearing Richard acknowledge his role in the pain, a pain that had in so many ways shaped my life, was more than I had anticipated. It was both astonishing and strangely comforting. My throat tightened, and for a moment I couldn't speak. Finally, I managed to say, "I appreciate you saying that, but it wasn't entirely your fault. Emily and I made our own mistakes too." A weak smile tugged at the corners of Richard's mouth, and his eyes softened. "Perhaps so," he murmured, "but I hope you can forgive an old man for his part in it." I swallowed hard, feeling a mixture of emotions: relief, pity, and a strange sense of release. "I forgive you," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. That conversation marked a turning point. After years of bitterness and distance, it opened a path for Emily and me to reconnect. Not as a couple, but as allies in a shared effort to support her father in his final days. We didn't rehash old arguments or dwell on past grievances. Instead, we focused on the present, on being there for Richard and for each other during such a difficult time. Richard passed away a few weeks later. At his funeral, Emily and I stood side by side, united not by love, but by a quiet mutual respect. In the days that followed, we found ourselves talking, not about what had gone wrong between us, but about the memories we had shared, the lessons we had learned, and the people we had become. We didn't reunite. That chapter of our lives had closed. But for the first time in years, I could look at Emily without feeling anger or resentment. Instead, there was a sense of harmony, an acknowledgement of the good times we had shared and the growth that had emerged from our struggles. Months later, an unexpected letter arrived in the mail. It was from Richard's lawyer, informing me that he had left me a small inheritance. Along with the money was a handwritten note. "James, thank you for forgiving me. Use this to begin something new. You deserve it. Richard." As I read the note, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed. Richard's words were simple yet profound, a final act of affirmation and generosity. That night, when Emily knocked on my door, I could never have envisioned it leading to this. Not a revival of romance, but a path toward healing and understanding. Life has a way of surprising you, and I've discovered that forgiveness is one of the greatest gifts you can offer, not only to others, but to yourself.